May 11th of 2007, Matthew Warren was in an area of 80th Street and St. Andrews, where his grandfather lived. Warren was sitting in the front passenger seat of a Ford Explorer when he saw a black Suburban pass by a couple times, which made him nervous. The Suburban then stopped behind a dumpster 2 to 4 feet away from the Explorer, with its back end closer to the back of the Explorer. There were 4 people inside the Suburban. Warren then saw an African-American male get out of the driver's seat of the Suburban. He then saw Devlin S. Davis, a Rollin Hundreds gang member, wearing gloves as he ran and grabbed something in his pants. Davis then extended his arm straight out from his body, holding a .38 caliber revolver, pointed and fired 3 times. He then said something like, "LA Crip," then returned to the Suburban. He says he saw 18-year-old Brian Tinelli get shot as Tinelli was walking across the street. Warren runs inside his grandfather's house to tell him to call 911. When he returned to Tinelli, he applied pressure to Tinelli's room. Tinelli said he was tired and wanted to go to sleep. Warren was afraid because the shooter's gun was a .38 caliber with 6 shots, and only 3 shots were fired. He made eye contact with the shooter and saw his eyes were reddish and real low, suggesting that the shooter was high or nervous. Warren identified Davis as a shooter in a 6-pack photographic lineup as an almost positive match. Ariel Walker, Tinell's girlfriend, had been with Tinell shortly before the shooting when she heard shots. She ran to the corner of St. Andrews and saw Tinell on the ground. Tinell always wore a hat, and when Walker saw the hat on the ground, she realized Tinell had been shot in the head. Walker took the hat with her and ran to Tinell's house. As Walker approached the house, she saw Wallace Tinell, Tinell's father, a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department. Walter Lee Bridges was walking down the street with Tinell when Tinell got shot. Bridges heard someone say "hey" and turned around and started walking backwards because he saw the guy had a gun. The gunman approached quickly and fired, and as Bridges ran, he heard 4 to 5 shots and saw a flash. Bridges described the shooter as African American, but did not see the shooter's face clearly enough to identify the shooter. Tinell habitually wore a Houston Astros baseball cap. The cap was one of the logos of the H.A. Hoover criminals. And the shooting occurred in the heart of territory claimed by the H.A. gangster Crips. The Black Crips was a rival of the H.A. Hoovers and the H.A. gangster Crips. Joshua Henry, who had known Tinell for 5 years, testified Tinell was not a member of a gang and knew nothing about what colors and clothing he couldn't wear. Even mentioning that when Tinell wore that hat, Henry told Tinell the hat was not appropriate to wear in certain areas because of gang connotations. Calvin Abed also heard gunshots that night. He heard 4 to 5 gunshots. He dropped to the ground and got up and peeked over a gate and saw a young man leaning over a tree. The gate was about 230 feet from the SUV. After the shots were fired, a man ran towards a black SUV and got in the passenger seat before it sped off. He mentioned that the man had a gun in his hand, but did not see if the man had fired the gun. In the photo lineup, Abbott identified Davis as a suspect who ran back into the car. Sadly, Tinell died of a gunshot wound to the head. Ballistics tests revealed that the bullet fragments removed from Tinell's head during the autopsy and the bullet recovered from the crime scene had been fired from a weapon found in the possession of Lenore Langley. On July 11th of 2007, Langley was arrested for possession of a handgun. He didn't want to speak to law enforcement because he was afraid for his safety he was labeled a snitch. But in a recorded interview, Langley told the police that the gun he had been arrested with had a murder on it. Langley said he had gotten a gun a week before he was arrested from No Brands, a member of the Black Crip. In the photo lineup, Langley identified Starks as No Brand. When Langley bought the gun from Starks for $50, he did not know it was hot. Langley once belonged to the Bounty Hunters Blood Gang, but he had been paralyzed in the shooting and no longer banged. In addition, he was concerned for his safety and the safety of his family. 4 days after the shooting, California Highway Patrol Officer Justin Burnhouse responded to a traffic incident on 11th and Harvard Avenue involving several vehicles. Burnhouse went into an alley where he saw a black Suburban with collision damage. He saw Starks getting out of the driver's seat of the car. Starks, who had an outstanding warrant for his arrest, admitted to driving the car. Jessica Midkiff, Starks' girlfriend, testified that she was present when the Suburban crashed. Midkiff started dating Starks in mid-2007. Starks was very controlling, and he let her know that if he didn't do what he asked, there would be consequences. On May 10th of 2007, Midkiff spent the night with Starks at the Desert Inn, a motel on Western and Imperial. The next day, Starks told her to drive to a location where two African-American males got into the car. Starks sat in the front passenger seat. Midkiff believed Davis sat behind her, and the other person sat in the back. As Midkiff drove, Davis gave her directions, but Starks told her not to listen. At Starks' direction, Midkiff headed towards downtown. And as they drove, Starks played some music. At Davis' request, one of the songs was played 3 to 4 times. Davis said it was his favorite song. He was acting really hyper and told the other rear passenger. As he said, "You never do any work." Starks told Midkiff to make a U-turn, so she did so and parked by a wall. The men in the back seat were wearing gloves, and Midkiff saw the butt of a black revolver, which Davis put into the front part of his pants, either in the waistband or pocket. After that, Davis and the other man got out of the car, went behind the car, and disappeared around the corner. Midkiff asked Starks what he had got her into, and he told her to shut up. Davis and the other man were gone for about a minute. Midkiff claimed she then heard 3 or 4 shots ring out. Starks then pulled her across him and got into the driver's seat. Davis and the other man soon returned back to the car, and Starks drove off, and then dropped the 2 men off. Before he was dropped off, Davis said, "I think I got somebody, but I don't know." And he was still hyper, saying, "I'm the man. I'm the motherfucking man," and appeared to be proud. Starks then told him to be quiet. Between May and December of 2007, Midkiff didn't contact the police out of fear. But after she was arrested, Midkiff identified Davis and Starks in a photographic lineup. And that same year, Vincent Jones was interviewed by police. He said the shooter was called Baby Man with the 11 Trey Block Crips. He said he often saw the shooter in the park with other gang members. He says one day Jones went up to the shooter and said, "What's up?" Jones brought up the shooting, but Baby Man denied it. Baby Man said, "Man, I'm finna go to jail." Jones, who knew Baby Man from school, said Baby Man was 17 or 18 years old, and his real name started with a D. In a recorded interview, Davis told the detectives that he was frightened and on ecstasy. Davis said he was picked up on 110th Street and got into a car with Jennifer and Starks, who was driving, and another person who Davis couldn't remember. When Davis entered the car, he told Starks he wanted to fight some Hoovers. Davis was under the influence of drugs, so he listened to Starks while they rolled up to Normandy into what he thought was the Hoover's turf. The car pulled over, and Starks told Davis to get out as he handed him a Chrome 38. Davis saw someone wearing a Houston hat, and Starks told him to do it. So Davis said he closed his eyes and started shooting in the air. He said he fired 3 shots, and it was the first time he used a gun. He said he wasn't trying to kill anyone and didn't see anyone fall. He says he saw people on the street in a black Expedition and felt bad and stupid afterwards. He's wearing gloves because Starks told him to put them on and didn't want to mess up his hands. He also told the detectives that he was a straight-A student, and when firing, he was not in his right mind. He only wanted to have friends and was trying to fit in. Also saying he didn't brag about the shooting and felt bad about it, since Starks called him a punk. He said he didn't know he hit anybody until the detectives told him he did. When Davis was in juvenile camp, someone told him that he had shot a police officer. Davis felt bad, and he knew he couldn't take it back. He said he never hurt anyone before and just wanted to be liked. Now, he would never see his son born, never go home again, and would spend the rest of his life in jail. In addition, the detectives put a recording device in a cell with Davis and Starks and recorded their conversation. Davis called Starks' brain and asked if the bitch was talking. Starks responded, "These bitches always telling." The individual that the man referred to as bitch was later identified as Jessica. Davis told Starks, "You gotta get to that bitch, homie. You gotta get to her. That's our only way out, cuz." And Starks told Davis, "It wouldn't even be a case if you ain't say nothing." Davis responded, "I know, cuz." Starks said his plan was to get her statements kicked out. Davis said his plan was to say he was retarded and he couldn't read, but he's quoted saying, "The police know where I'm from, and they saw my tattoos, cuz." Once the trial started, Starks testified that he was out of town when the shootings took place. On rebuttal though, the general manager of the Desert Inn testified that there was a registration card with the number of Starks' driver's license, showing the check-in day of May 10th of 2007. And in the end, Davis was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life for the murder. The Hoovers and the Rollin Hundreds have been going at it for years. And if 100 days and 100 nights wasn't an example of how much these gangs hate each other, hopefully this last one gave you a better idea.